morning, when Ugo went outside his hut, he noticed a weird pot. Skeptically, he looked inside the pot, and it was filled with money, just as the elderly woman he met the previous afternoon had said. He looked left and right to be sure no one was looking. Then he hurriedly took the pot inside his hut. Once upon a time, in a small village called Udemba, there lived a very beautiful and adorable young lady called Ifoma, who fell in love with a poor farmer called Ugo. Ifoma was the daughter of Chief Okafo, a powerful, well-known, humble and affluent chief. Chief Okafo was well known in the surrounding community for his wealth, humility and prominence. He was regarded as the wealthiest and wisest man in Udemba. Many men came from all over to ask for Ifoma's hand in marriage, but she refused many of them. She was helplessly in love with Ugo and wished to spend the rest of her life with him. But she couldn't show Ugo to her father because Ugo was a commoner and living in poverty. She felt concerned that her father would be against their union. Ugo didn't stand a chance against the caliber of men that had sought her hand in marriage, but she was hopeful that one day Ugo would become very successful. Ugo was an orphan who lived on the outskirts of Udemba. He had a very small farmland that he inherited from his parents, where he produced crops, and a small hut where he lived. He produced just enough for himself and a little extra to sell at the market for a profit. He deeply loved Ifoma, but he was intimidated by her father's wealth. He believed that Chief Okafo would reject him because he was a small farmer. He believed that he needed to be extremely wealthy in order to impress Chief Okafo. One very hot afternoon, Ugo was on his farmland when an old woman arrived. The old woman appeared very tired and exhausted. She asked Ugo for some water. Ugo had only a calabash of water with him, and the day was still long, but he gave her the calabash of water, which she greatly appreciated. She admired Ugo's generosity in giving her all of his water, despite the fact he would be left with none. She thanked him, but before she left, she asked him to make a wish. She promised to grant him any wish he made. Ugo stared at his farmland and looked around himself. Then he looked at the woman and said,
"I wish to be rich, and I also wish to have a long life."
The woman laughed heartily at Ugo's statement.
"I asked you to make one wish, yet you made two. I can grant one wish for free, but two wishes would come at a price,"
she told Ugo.
"I'm ready to pay any price,"
Ugo said without hesitation.
"All right then,"
the elderly woman said.
"At the break of every day, you would receive a pot containing money. This would enable you become extremely wealthy and remain so, depending on how you choose to use it. Your second wish was to live a long life. The price you must pay for this is to always give half of the money you find in the pot to the less fortunate."
When the woman said this, she laughed and walked away until she disappeared into the horizon. Ugo couldn't comprehend what had just happened. He felt the elderly woman was playing tricks, so he dismissed the thought and returned to work on the farm. The next morning, when Ugo went outside his hut, he noticed a weird pot. Skeptically, he looked inside the pot, and it was filled with money, just as the elderly woman he met the previous afternoon had said. He looked left and right to be sure no one was looking. Then he hurriedly took the pots inside his hut and counted the money. It was quite a sum, and he considered what to do with the money. And he remembered the price the elderly woman had stated he would pay because he met 2 wishes. He hurriedly divided the money into 2 halves. He went to the market and distributed half of the money to the less fortunate as instructed by the elderly woman. Every time he offered someone money, they thanked him and prayed for him. They would pray that he would increase in wealth and live a long life. As he continued in this manner every day, many people in the market grew fond of him. He was given the nickname Helper of the Poor. This gave him a sense of accomplishment, but gradually, pride started to creep in as people applauded him whenever he distributed alms to the less fortunate. Every morning, when Ugo awoke, he discovered another pot of money on his porch. With this insight, he became certain that the elderly woman was an angel sent to liberate him from poverty. As each day went by, he did exactly as the elderly woman instructed him, but his pride grew with each passing day. He stopped being humble and became very pompous. Instead of giving the less fortunate half of the money as directed, he would make them work for it. He would take them to his farm and instruct them to till the soil before he gave them money. He transformed into an entirely different person, disregarding his elders and belittling the poor. He forgot he was once like them. In contrast to his previous austere lifestyle, he became highly flamboyant and ostentatious. He scarcely had time for Ifeoma, the woman he claimed to be deeply in love with. When Ugo was poor, Ifeoma had proposed that they met every evening at the village square. But as fortune came, Ugo stopped going to the village square. Ifeoma would wait and return home, disappointed and heartbroken. One day, Ifeoma was sent on an errand, and the destination was close to Ugo's residence, so she decided to drop by his house. When she arrived, Ugo was sitting in front of his hut. She saw him eating. She was astonished at the type of meal he was eating. It was a very pricey one. She asked him how he acquired the money, but he lied, saying he was fortunate to sell his crops at a higher price. Ifeoma was unaware of his encounter with the elderly woman. He asked Ifeoma to join him, but she politely declined. Ifeoma asked him why he stopped coming to the village square in their usual meeting place. But Ugo lied that he had been sick. Afterwards, he told Ifeoma he would come to see her father in a month. Ifeoma was surprised. She was aware that Ugo was a struggling farmer, and she also believed that if Ugo wasn't affluent, her father might reject him. She asked him what made him so confident that he would be wealthy in a month. But Ugo told her not to worry. He only asked her to continue praying for his success. When Ifeoma returned home from Ugo's hut, she was overjoyed. She told her father about a man who wanted her hand in marriage. Chief Okafor was thrilled to see her daughter excited about getting married, despite rejecting so many suitors. However, he instructed his daughter to inform the man that he would not be seeing any suitors until 3 months had passed. Ifeoma didn't understand why, but she passed the message to Ugo. When Ugo got the news, he was equally overjoyed. It meant he had plenty of time to make more money to show off when he finally met Chief Okafor. In 3 months' time, Ugo now had a bigger farmland and a larger hut. The pride had eaten so deep into him. When he was convinced that he had all he required to impress Ifeoma's father, he proceeded to see Chief Okafor to ask for his daughter's hand in marriage. When he arrived at Chief Okafor's compound, he threw money around lavishly as if it were nothing, offering money to the maids and servants for no apparent reason, demonstrating pride and arrogance. When he was welcomed into Chief Okafor's chambers, he did not bow or respect Chief Okafor as was expected. He didn't even wait until he was told to sit. He sat arrogantly. His first words were,
"My name is Ugo, popularly known as the helper of the poor, because I frequently give to those in need. I have come to ask for your daughter's hand in marriage."
Chief Okafor gazed at him with pity and contempt. He told Ugo that he is pleased with his fortune and accomplishments, but he cannot marry his daughter. This made Ugo very angry. He walked out on Chief Okafor, insulting him as he did. Ifeoma was very hot. She deeply loved Ugo, so she quickly ran after him, against her father's injunction not to do so. When she caught up with Ugo, she grabbed his hands and dropped to her knees, begging Ugo to return and reconcile with her father. But Ugo shoved her away and walked out on her as well. Ifeoma refused to eat for days because she was hot and heartbroken. She hated her father and stopped speaking to him on account of him refusing to accept Ugo as her husband. Ugo returned to his hut, indignant and enraged. He began to plan how to make Chief Okafor regret refusing him as his daughter's husband. He began planning to hire a group of bandits to plunder Chief Okafor's farmland. He wanted Chief Okafor to become poor so that he would be the wealthiest man in Udemba. After 5 days, Ifeoma went to meet her father and asked him why he rejected Ugo, despite the fact that he was affluent like her other suitors. Chief Okafor informed Ifeoma that he was aware all along of her relationship with Ugo. He told Ifeoma that he knew that they were in love, and he also knew that the reason Ugo hadn't come to see him was because he was a struggling farmer who feared being rejected if he requested for her hand in marriage. Her father made her understand that his primary goal was not wealth, but rather personality. He told Ifeoma that he had sent an elderly woman in disguise to see Ugo at the farm and requested that he made a wish. Chief Okafor told his daughter that Ugo displayed greed at first by making 2 wishes instead of 1. And his second flaw was pride and arrogance. He told Ifeoma that every morning before dawn, he would send a servant to deliver a pot of money at Ugo's porch. He made her realize that Ugo was not the man he claimed or portrayed himself to be. He revealed to Ifeoma that Ugo was obligated to give the less fortunate half of the money he received every morning. But instead, he began to make them suffer to get it. He ultimately told Ifeoma that he had sent the elderly woman because he wanted to discover Ugo's true nature. He stated that a man's true essence and personality can only be revealed in abundance, not in scarcity. If he was the right man for her, he would be transparent, sincere, and compassionate. Ifeoma pondered deeply about what her father had said. She asked herself why Ugo would lie to her about the source of his wealth. Why would he conceal the source of his fortune? And why would he exploit the less privileged simply because he was now fortunate? Ifeoma saw reasons in what her father had said. She knelt before him and apologized for being difficult. She promised to listen to him at all times. Her father forgave her and embraced her warmly. Ugo organized a group of thieves a few months later. But when he revealed who their target was, they turned on him and robbed him instead. Chief Okafor was well known for his generosity to others. He had previously assisted one of the bandits in his time of desperate need, and they considered this as their way of repaying him. Ugo stopped getting the pot of money, and everyone detested him because he was arrogant and haughty while he was prosperous. Nobody was willing to help him. He eventually sold an enormous portion of his farmland for a low price because he couldn't afford to hire laborers or buy seedlings. In just a couple of months, he was back to penury and lack. He deteriorated worse than he had before the elderly woman paid him a visit on the farm. Ugo was devastated. He returned to Ifeoma, but she was no more interested in him. She explained to him that she didn't want to spend the rest of her life with a man who only acknowledged her presence when he was impoverished and ignored her when he became prosperous. A young, handsome and responsible man shortly sought Ifeoma's hand in marriage, which she accepted. They were married and they lived happily ever after, with her father's approval. The moral lesson of this story is that true character is revealed in wealth. You can never know a person's true character until they become powerful and wealthy. A poor man can never be tagged humble. Do not be discouraged by your current situation. Always try to make a move. Chief Okafor didn't reject Ugo because he was poor. He may have accepted him if he came for his daughter's hand in marriage, even when he was impoverished. Pride cometh before a fall. Do not allow pride and arrogance sneak into your life. Always be humble, no matter what you think you are worth. Never forget where you came from. Always remember your past and use that as motivation to strive harder and better, so as not to go back there. Do not mock others in a position where you once stayed before life happens fast and you might return back there.